What's up, everyone? Welcome to Bill Bronze and Dragons. I'm your host, Bill Bron Bafflestone. So today we're having another episode of my deep dive series. Today looking at wall spells. Personally, I love a good wall. I'm a defensive-minded player, so when I see a massive enemies rushing me, I like to have the option of being like, nope, I've got cookies in the oven. We're not doing this right now. Wall. And they're stuck. They can't do anything because I've walled them off. And I like being able to look at a big group of enemies and say, oh, these guys are kind of tough all at once, so I'm going to wall off a bunch of them, and then we'll take care of this group, and then we'll take care of this other group while they're helplessly beating against the wall. And I like to throw up walls that we can push and pull enemies through. Tons of push-pull options in 5e right now, and it's awesome to be able to use a wall to inflict all sorts of crazy good damage that way. So I would love a good wall. But you want generally 6 things out of a good wall, and there is not a single wall in the game that gives you all of them. They all have various combinations of these. 1, you want your wall to be able to block movement. That seems kind of like a no-brainer. You would also like it to block ranged attacks and other stuff like spells. That kind of also makes sense, right? You would want it to block sight. Blocking off line of sight is very important in 5th edition. 4, you want it to be able to enclose your enemies with no saving throw and trap them within the wall. 5, you would like your wall to inflict blast damage when you put it up, because obviously that's way better than it not inflicting blast damage. And 6, you want it to inflict persistent area of effect damage, because again, that's quite obviously better than not doing so. So those are the 6 things that you look for out of a wall. They don't all get them, and that means some walls are better than others. So let's take a look and figure out what the best walls are. This is technically a review and rating series, but I've decided to try and shrink down the amount of series that I have, so I'm calling this a deep dive, but I will be putting some ratings on there. And I do want to thank all of the boys in my Patreon Discord. Once again, they are always very helpful in calling out mistakes and adding stuff, so thanks so much. And if you want to be a part of that, feel free to check out the Patreon, or like, subscribe, comment, and share if you want to support the channel. Without further ado, let's take a look at wall spells. So we're going to go through these wall spells by level, and I've created a spreadsheet that's going to allow us to compare the walls side by side and see what they can do and not do for us. And so we are starting with Wall of Sand, a 3rd level spell available to wizards, eldritch knights, arcane tricksters, and bards through the use of magical secrets. 10-minute duration and 90-foot range, and we see that the only things that Wall of Sand does for us that we want out of a wall is it blocks some move and it blocks sight. That's all you get. It comes in only one shape, a straight, flat, vertical line or plane, 30 feet in length, 10 feet high, and 10 feet wide. It only partially blocks movement, slowing it to 3 squares of movement per square over 2 squares. On the plus side, it does stack with difficult terrain, but in practice, this is basically just going to remove 20 feet of move from your closing enemies. And this spell is terrible. The opportunity cost for this is a different 3rd level spell like Sleet Storm or Hypnotic Pattern. I mean, 3rds just tend to be amazing, and this one doesn't make the top 10, and that's being nice about it. Terrible spell, Wall of Sand. I give it a rating of inferior. It should really be a 1st level spell in my opinion. And even then, I probably wouldn't take it. Next we have Wall of Water, also a 3rd level spell available to wizards, eldritch knights, arcane tricksters, bards through magical secrets, druids, sorcerers, and tritons. 10-minute duration and 60-foot range. We see that it will block some move for us. It will enclose enemies with no save. It will block some ranged attacks and some other stuff. It comes in 2 shapes, a straight flat vertical line / plane of 30 feet in length, 10 feet high, and 1 foot thick, or you can make a ring of 20 feet in diameter and 20 feet high. Note that the dimensions for all of these walls are up to, so you can make them smaller if it's tactically advantageous. So the Wall of Water only partially blocks movement in that it creates difficult terrain over 1 square if they're just crossing the wall. Not much. However, do note that you can freeze sections of the wall, in which case they will fully block movement until broken. And so it's interesting to combo Wall of Water with things like Shape Water or cold spells or abilities, but the action economy of that is terrible. You probably want to get allies involved if you're going to try something like that. Not the easiest thing to pull off, but it is possible. It doesn't block line of sight, so it's not going to work against enemies with a sight-based teleport option. And while it doesn't block ranged attacks, it will impose disadvantage on ranged attacks if they are from weapons. And if it's fire damage, it will reduce it by half, in such a manner that does stack with fire resistance. Not much, but it's something, and this is the lowest level wall, so I guess they didn't want to make it that powerful. Do note that it might be an auto kill versus a fire elemental. Kind of ambiguous. Ask your DM about that one. It would be a lot better in that specialty situation if the DM is cool with it. And again, the opportunity cost of this spell is a different 3rd level spell. This one's better than Wall of Sand, but that's not saying much. I give this spell a rating of poor. I would never take it unless I'm going for thematic role-playing synergy or something, and if it wouldn't screw up the table. We get one last 3rd level wall spell, Wind Wall. This one is not available to wizards. It's available only to bards with magical secrets, druids, rangers, nature clerics, artillerist artificers, djinn genie warlocks, and Mark of the Storm half-elves. So Wind Wall is very unusual in that it creates a squiggly, contiguous, vertical line 50 feet long and 15 feet high. This is amazing for tactical placement, particularly since we can do blast damage with this, so we're going to be able to just snake it around however we need to in order to get our enemies in that area of effect. Now, because it's wind, it basically doesn't block movement, except for small or tiny creatures in flight or creatures in gaseous form. So that's not a high percentage of creatures, but it can be situationally useful if you're fighting a swarm or something. And some creatures that fly are small or tiny. So if you stack this with flight, it will increase the percentage of auto wins that it gains from us from like 60 or 70% to like 70 or 80% or 65 to 75%. Whatever that percentage is, I will take it. Now it does block some attacks. It will block all material ranged attacks like arrows or javelins, unless they're huge like the boulders that giants throw and such. But it also has no effect on immaterial ranged attacks, like Eldritch Blast or Scorching Ray or Firebolt. So obviously that's good in the right situation and not so good in other situations. But this is our first wall that inflicts blast damage. Not much, 3d8, but it's only a 3rd level spell and it's magical bludgeoning damage, which is really good. It is strength save for half, which kind of sucks, and you can't upcast it. But you can target it really well because of the squiggly line thing, and combined with all of the other riders, I'm fine with 3d8 blast damage. The wind wall will also keep away fog, smoke, and other gases. That makes it an excellent defense versus offenses with fog, smoke, or gas, like Stinking Cloud or Cloud Kill. Do ask your DM if it hedges out pre-existing gases and stuff. I think it will, but I've talked to people who think it won't, so ask your DM. And note that it is an excellent defense versus inhaled poisons, because I know that we are constantly running into enemies who are throwing inhaled poison at us, right? Anyway, I think this is a solid defensive option when combined with flight. The only thing I don't like about it is the opportunity cost. It is a 3rd level spell, and 3rds are amazing. Still, wizard 3rds are the best, and wizards don't get this one. And so I think this is a contender for your spells known or whatever as a 3rd level spell. I give it a rating of good. I'm a fan of Wind Wall. Next up, we have our first and only 4th level wall, Wall of Fire. This is the wall that is available to the most classes. You can get it as a wizard, eldritch knight, arcane trickster, bard with magical secrets, druid, sorcerer, light or forge clerics, artillerist artificers, celestial or fiend warlocks, and 4-element monks. Only a 1-minute duration. Most walls have 10, but still long enough for most combats. 120-foot range, and we see that it gets us a lot of cool effects. It will enclose enemies with no save, and it will block sight, and it will inflict blast damage and persistent AoE. Unfortunately, it doesn't do any of that blocking stuff that I tend to expect out of walls. It comes in 2 shapes, the straight flat vertical line or plane, 60 feet long, 20 feet high, or a ring, 20 feet in diameter and 20 feet high. So it's going to inflict 5d8 or 22.5 fire damage, both as a blast and as a persistent AoE. It's dex save for half, which is a decent save type, and you can upcast this for a d8 per level. Because it creates persistent AoE, it's got great synergy with grapple and push-pull tactics. And these are very common now, so a Wall of Fire could have a very strong impact. The AoE is decent. It's within 10 feet of one side of the wall, about the equivalent number of squares to a 15-foot radius. And they'll take the damage if they end their turn there or upon entering the square. Seems good on paper. Again, the biggest problem to me is the opportunity cost. 4th level spells can be really good, like Summon Greater Demon. But some classes don't get an amazing 4th level list, and if your party is really decked out with grapple and push-pull options, Wall of Fire can be a good spell. I give it a rating of average. Next, we have our first of 3 5th level wall spells, Wall of Force. This famous spell is available to wizards, bards with magical secrets, clockwork soul sorcerers, artillerists and armorer artificers, and the redemption paladin. So in many ways, Wall of Force is the opposite of Wall of Fire. It basically does all of the stuff that it doesn't, and vice versa. It comes in different shapes. You get a straight flat line plane option made up of 10 contiguous 10 by 10 panels. It does not have to be vertical. The caster can choose to put the Wall of Force at an angle. Or you can create a sphere or a hemisphere of 10-foot radius or 20-foot diameter, which we should note is large enough to target even a gargantuan creature, and it blocks all movement, even ethereal movement, and it can't be broken, and it's immune to dispel magic. That's fantastic. Once you put up a Wall of Force, it's not going anywhere. Unless they have Disintegrate. It is automatically defeated by Disintegrate, which is kind of weird to me because I thought the Wall of Force was invisible and you need sight to target Disintegrate, but I guess it's not. I guess it's transparent, but you can still see it. Now, the block all move plus can enclose enemies plus no save plus can place unsupported in the air is an amazeballs combo. This is why Wall of Force is one of the most highly regarded spells in 5th edition. It will create auto kills when deployed as part of certain combos. You can either retain line of effect and start pumping in attacks and spells to an enemy that can't go anywhere, though I personally think this is suboptimal because that means your enemy can do the same to you, or you can completely cut off line of effect and then combine it with certain persistent AoE, specifically Mordenkainen's Faithful Hound. Those two together are an auto kill that presents no danger whatsoever to the party. However, it takes some preparation to have an option available that doesn't require line of effect, so you may need to take advantage of the hemisphere shape option, plus the fact that you can place it unsupported in the air. That is extremely powerful because you can place the hemisphere slightly above the floor, a fraction of an inch, and that will retain the line of effect. That's not something you can do with any other wall because no other wall blocks movement and can be placed into the air. So Wall of Force is really fantastic, even if it doesn't block line of sight. If it did block line of sight, it would probably be overpowered. It's already crazy powerful. It's one of the strongest 5th level spells in 5th edition. Personally, I think you are nuts if you don't take it when it first becomes available. Also at 5th level, we have Wall of Light, available to wizards, bards with magical secrets, sorcerers, and warlocks, 10-minute duration and 120-foot range. And this wall doesn't do much defensively. This is an offensive wall. It does block sight, I guess. But otherwise, this is about pumping out damage. It only comes in the straight flat line planes shape. 60 foot long, 10 feet high, does not need to be vertical. You can choose any orientation. And it does emit a lot of light, so that can be good when you need light, like if you're fighting a Gloomstalker or Devils or something. It inflicts blast damage and semi-persistent damage to the tune of 48 radiant, and it will inflict blindness, which is a great rider. Now it's a con save for half or no blindness, and that is a bad save type, though you can upcast it for an additional d8 per level, and the damage is basically only inflicted once, because for it to be inflicted again, they have to end their turn in the Wall of Light, and that's probably not going to happen unless you force the issue with grapple tactics. So there is some potential synergy with grapple tactics, but it's not going to get any benefit from push-pull tactics. That's really kind of a downer. Once you put the wall up, you now have the option of using your action to inflict a ranged spell attack for 48 radiant damage. Doing so does reduce the length of the wall by 10 feet, and I find this a completely unimpressive option. I mean, it takes your action. I mean, I suppose it's better than a cantrip, but still I'm not too impressed here, especially given that the opportunity cost of this spell is a different 5th level spell, like Animate Objects or Wall of Force. I mean, 5ths are amazing, and this one is not amazing. I will say that for some reason I often see it mentioned in combination with Wall of Force, but I don't know why. I feel like there's other good options and I don't really see anything intrinsically special about Wall of Light for this, so I'm not impressed with Wall of Light. I give it a rating of poor. Our last 5th level wall is Wall of Stone, available to wizards, bards with magical secrets, druids, sorcerers, artificers, Dao Genie warlocks, and 4-element monks. It has a range of 120 feet and a 10-minute duration, but it can become permanent at the end of the 10-minute duration. Oh my god, that is so awesome. It's not easy to create permanent spell effects in 5th edition, and a huge wall of stone becoming permanent, oh, that's so good in my opinion. Furthermore, it can take any shape. It's the only wall spell that's not restricted to a straight flat line, plane, or a ring, sphere, hemisphere. You get 10 contiguous panels of 10 by 10 by 6 inches, or you can double the area by having the thickness, and that's a lot of stone that you can force to take any shape. It's the only defensive wall that can create a zigzag configuration to create multiple layers. That's fantastic. Only downside is that you basically need stone available to cast it. It has to be extended from pre-existing environmental stone. That is not going to be good in certain campaigns. That said, in other campaigns, it'll be amazing. And if there's a lot of stone around, then you can strategically use the environment to increase the effective AoE by incorporating the floor and the ceiling and the walls and objects and stuff as part of the dimensions. So that's good. As long as there's stone around, Wall of Stone has a huge impact. Now note that it does block all movement, but that you can break it. It's not that easy. It has an AC of 15 and 30 hit points per inch of thickness, so either 180 or 90 hit points. So while enemies can break through it, it's not that easy. Now the Wall of Stone can enclose enemies. However, they do get a dexterity save to use their reaction to escape the AoE. So that's problematic. But you can work around it. You can eliminate their reaction through shocking grasp or enticing them to use their opportunity attack. Or you can arrange it so they don't have enough movement to escape the AoE. You can just make it really big and place it properly. Or you can combo it with move reduction abilities like Tentacle of the Deep or Ray of Frost. And so that's obviously inferior to Wall of Force, which will also enclose enemies but doesn't give them a save. However, Wall of Stone is bigger. Wall of Force will enclose 4x4 squares, whereas Wall of Stone will enclose 8x4 squares at 3 inches of thickness if you only use the floor. You can even make it bigger if you incorporate walls and stuff. So Wall of Force is still better for that, but Wall of Stone does make up for it a bit with the bigger area. And like with Wall of Force, while the opportunity cost of this spell is a different 5th level spell like Animate Objects, that doesn't matter to me because this one is a contender. This is one of my favorite spells. I think it's an excellent alternative to Wall of Force, and I would totally take this over Wall of Force in, say, an Underdark campaign. Don't forget, Bilbrand Bafflestone originally played in an Underdark campaign, and believe me, I had Wall of Stone and I didn't have Wall of Force. Also in part because my nemesis Titivolus has a site-based teleport, and Wall of Force isn't great against a site-based teleport unless you combo it with Obscurement, but anyway. I love Wall of Stone. I give it a rating of good plus or 4.5 stars. Just a hair below Wall of Force, which I think sets the standard. There are 2 6th level walls, the first being Blade Barrier. This is available to bards with magical secrets, divine soul sorcerers, and clerics. 10-minute duration, 90 feet range, comes in a straight flat vertical line or plane of 100 feet long and 20 feet high, so that's pretty big. Or it can make a ring of up to 30-foot radius or 60-foot diameter. Note that it only partially blocks movement. It only creates difficult terrain per square over 1 square if you're crossing it. But do note that it confers 3/4 cover. Not the total cover that a solid wall does, but 3/4 is still pretty good. Though note that this applies to creatures behind the blade barrier and not in the blade barrier, or else it would confer a +5 bonus to its own dex save, right? That doesn't make any sense. Now, it does not block line of sight, so ineffective versus enemies with a sight-based teleport. But the main thing is that Blade Barrier inflicts semi-blast and persistent AoE to the tune of 60, 10, or 33 magical slashing damage. Dex save for half, and that's a decent save type. You cannot upcast it, excellent damage type, and strong synergy with grapple and push-pull options. The damage is taken upon entering the Blade Barrier or starting your turn there. And note that that means you can get them twice per round. If they start their turn there, they'll take the damage and then move out of it, and then you push them back in and they're going to take it twice. That's pretty sweet. So the opportunity cost of this spell is a different 6th, like Sunbeam. Personally, I find Cleric 6th to be pretty terrible, so this one's a solid add, even though it's inferior to many other walls. I give it a rating of average, but maybe I should make that average plus. It's probably closer to average plus than average. Our next 6th level wall is Wall of Ice, available to wizards, bards with magical secrets, and arcana clerics. 10-minute duration, 120-foot range. It comes with shapes similar to Wall of Force, with a straight flat line/plane of 10 contiguous 10x10 panels, which do not need to be vertical, or the sphere hemisphere with a 10-foot radius or 20-foot diameter. Now note that the Wall of Ice does block movement, but it's easily broken, not nearly as durable as Wall of Stone. However, it does block all move and can enclose enemies with no save, and that's an excellent combination. It's more difficult with this to create auto-kill conditions than it is with Wall of Force because you can't retain the line of effect as the hemisphere shape has to touch the surface. Remember, the Wall of Force, we can't put it in the air. So with Wall of Ice, we would need to use stuff like Mordenkainen's Faithful Hound. If it kills them fairly slowly, they're going to be able to break out of the ice. So not quite as good in that role as Wall of Force. But it does have a lot of other stuff that Wall of Force doesn't. Specifically, it does damage. It will inflict blast damage and sometimes persistent AoE damage. 10d6 blast damage is pretty solid. Dex save for half, which is pretty decent, and you can upcast it, get an extra 2d6 on the blast, and then it will create persistent AoE, but only within a broken segment. So it probably will break, given how fragile it is, and then it creates this freezing, persistent AoE, and that does have synergy with grapple and push-pull combos once it's procced, since damage is taken upon entering the square. So a little clunky logistically, but it is nice to have that persistent AoE option. Personally, I think Wall of Ice is awesome. The opportunity cost of this spell is a different 6th, like Mass Suggestion, but I think this is an underrated contender, especially if it blocks sight. You've got to talk to your DM about that, because it doesn't specify that it blocks sight, therefore it doesn't, in my opinion. But I've seen some DMs, notably Treant Monk, make the argument that you cannot see through this ice, so your mileage may vary. Ask your DM. If you can't see through it, it's like super powerful and awesome, but even so, I give it a rating of superior. I'm a big fan of Wall of Ice. It's a blast, it's a persistent AoE, and it's a wall all in one. Our last 6th level wall is Wall of Thorns, available to bards with magical secrets and the druid. 10-minute duration, 120-foot range, comes in a straight flat vertical line or plane of 60 feet in length and 10 feet high, or a ring 20 feet in diameter. Now it only partially blocks movement, but it does slow it tremendously to 4 squares necessary to cross over the 1 square. It does stack with difficult terrain, so you can make it even harder. But the great thing about Wall of Thorns is that it inflicts blast and persistent AoE damage to the tune of 78 or 31.5 magical piercing. Dex save for half, which is decent. You can upcast this, and it's an excellent damage type. So great synergy with grapple and push-pull options, since you take the damage upon entering it or ending your turn there. The opportunity cost of this is a different druid 6th, like Investiture of Stone, but I still think this one is pretty solid and a decent choice. I give it a rating of average. We have one 8th level wall, Tsunami. I call it a wall because the phrase wall of water is all over the spell description. But it's weird. 1 minute casting time, so it's not a combat spell. However, it has a range of sight. So you're not casting it in combat, but from a long range, so that makes it pretty awesome for smashing an army or a town or something from, like 10 miles away. They're not going to do anything to you, except die, really. So it's absolutely massive. It's a straight flat line plane of 300 by 300 by 50. And oddly, it doesn't need to be on the ground and it doesn't need to be vertical. So you can put this up in the air and wipe out flying armies and stuff. Now, technically, it only partially blocks movement, but you've got to make a strength check to move at all. And then you have to swim, which is going to be half your speed if you don't have a swim speed. So this is pretty strong. The pseudo-grappled condition and the pseudo-difficult terrain is pretty strong. Unless you're a gargantuan creature, then it has no effect at all. Now note that it doesn't technically enclose your enemies, but the AoE is just so huge, it practically does. And note that the Tsunami also moves away from the caster at a pretty impressive speed of 50 per round. Now, we need to get pedantic here and point out that it's not directly away, like it says in spells like Incendiary Cloud. So that means we have some discretion and can therefore direct the Tsunami upwards, because a diagonal is still away from us. That means it's going to drag enemies upwards with it, and then if they swim out or the spell ends, they're going to fall. And remember, this thing moves at 50 feet per round, so they could be falling a really long distance and take a bunch of damage. This can be a pretty lethal way to use Tsunami if the conditions are right. Now, it doesn't block line of sight, but it inflicts pretty darn good damage. Blast and persistent AoE of 6d10 magical bludgeoning, although note that the persistent damage is reduced by d10 every round, and again note that the damage doesn't affect gargantuan creatures, and note that it's a strength save for half, which is a bad save type. And you can't upcast it. But it's 8th level, so why would you want to? And it's an excellent damage type. It has synergy with grapple and push-pull tactics because the damage is taken at the start of the caster's turn, whether the enemy starts in it or if the AoE moves into the enemy. And note that it's like a neutron bomb. It only affects creatures and it doesn't affect objects or buildings. So you can like clear out the riffraff from a town or something and now you've got a town. You didn't damage any of that valuable capital. Man, would governments around the world love access to Tsunami. So on paper, Tsunami is pretty cool, albeit a niche spell with that 1 minute casting time. The opportunity cost of it is a different 8th level spell, and druids have pretty good ones like Animal Shapes and Antipathy Sympathy. So I'm not blown away by Tsunami. I give it a rating of average, but I will say it does sound like fun to cast. Blowing up an army from 10 miles away, that sounds like a good time. Our final wall spell is Prismatic Wall at 9th level, available to wizards, bards, and arcana clerics. Comes in a straight flat vertical line or plane of 90 feet in length and 30 feet high, or you can make it into a sphere of 15-foot radius or 30-foot diameter. Interestingly, there is no hemisphere option, like with Wall of Force and Wall of Ice, so it's kind of weird about casting it on the ground. You'll have to ask your DM how many creatures you can affect. And note that the wall fails if there's any creatures in the AoE when it manifests, so it is not a blast. Note also that technically the Prismatic Wall can be destroyed layer by layer. Each layer is defeated in order by a specific countermeasure, but note that these countermeasures are pretty esoteric and it's unlikely that people are going to know them. I think it would take a pretty high Arcana check, personally. And then they actually have to do it, which isn't the easiest, so good luck with that. Now it does block stuff. It blocks all ranged attacks unless the first or second layer is destroyed, and it blocks all spells unless the 6th layer is destroyed. It emits 100 feet of bright light and 100 feet of dim light, so that can be good. And it does inflict persistent blindness for 1 minute if the enemy starts their turn in the area of effect. You can also push them into it and get the blindness effect, though it does have a con save, which isn't great. There is good synergy here with grapple and push-pull options, and even better, the caster can exclude himself and his allies from being affected. That's pretty awesome. It also has a huge AoE of 20 feet within the line, so that's 144 squares, and it inflicts a lot of damage and conditions. 50 d6 or 175 points of damage, plus restrained, plus blind, and if you're restrained, you have to make a series of con saves or be petrified, and if you go blind, then you have to make a single wisdom save or be teleported to another plane. All of that sucks. So all of that combined is pretty incredible. You have to make 7 dex saves, which will get you half damage versus each 10d6, and avoid the restrained or blind. So man, yeah, if you can get people into it, it will really, really hurt them. Not us though, because the caster can exclude himself and his allies from being affected, which again is awesome. Huge, huge synergy with grapple and push-pull tactics here, because they take the damage when they pass through the wall, and there's no mention of once per turn, so they can get multiple instances of all of that damage and stuff. Because remember, if we make a sphere, that's 2 layers. We can push them through both layers. Getting pushed through 2 layers of a prismatic wall in the same turn is not fun. It's also the only wall spell that doesn't require concentration, so that's fantastic. Now we can combo it with stuff like a Big Beast Arcane Hand or something. Or even better, you can do the classic and lethal Prismatic Wall plus Reverse Gravity combo. Because with this, you put the Prismatic Wall above them and hit them with Reverse Gravity. They fall through it twice going up. Then you drop concentration on Reverse Gravity and they hit it twice going down. And passing through a Prismatic Wall 4 times in the same turn is going to kill pretty much anything. That one is amazeballs. So Prismatic Wall looks amazing on the surface. The only downside is the opportunity cost. It's a 9th level spell. You could be casting Wish or Shape Change or one of the other premium knights. So against those, it doesn't look as good. I give it a rating of average, but I will say it sounds like mad fun to cast in combo. I do want to do it one day. To actually pull off the Reverse Gravity Prismatic Wall combo in gameplay would be awesome sauce. So that's it. That's my analysis and look at the various wall spells in D&D 5th edition. I hope you found it useful. Regardless, thank you so much for watching. This has been Bill Bronze and Dragons. I'm your host, Bill Bron Bafflestone. See you next time.